All right, recording is in progress. So thank you everyone for joining today. This is part of our webinar series at Seed Programs International, where we, take on different topics. Robin can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is our third one, and we're talking about, growing, replicating, and sharing seed. And this is a scalable approach so that communities can feed themselves. So why improving production or productivity matters? One, we need to fulfill current need. There's a growing population still. There's clearly higher levels of consumption as people earn more, they consume more, and not an insubstantial part of that is food, and it's often food that requires more input. So if you're eating meat, clearly there is a lot of grain that goes into producing meat instead of consuming grain itself directly. And then of course we're all aware that we're in changing and challenging growing environments, and this is directly related to climate change, but has always been the case to some extent. How do you increase food production in a community? And there's two basic ways here I think we can mention. One is better agronomy, how we grow the food, and the other one is better varieties, and that's what we grow. There's a little bit of nuance in both of these, and you could break them out into sort of subcategories of things, but just to keep these two big categories in front of us. And Dennis was mentioning his work on agronomy when we were doing introductions. We're going to focus on the seed aspect because we're Seed Programs International, so we're going to focus on what's being grown as opposed to the agronomy, but both are important. So, how do we get improved varieties to growers? One is the formal seed system, and this is something that we're all familiar with. There's companies that sell seed to growers. This works very well, but it only reaches so many growers in some circumstances. If you go to the U.S., for many crops, say like maize, this is essentially almost 100% formal sector where people are buying seed from an established company. But there's also what people call the informal seed system, and this is like grower to grower or grower to market to grower. And this is another way that seed can reach communities. Sometimes in the US, people will talk about bin running or brown bagging, and what that means is you grow your crop and then you save a portion of your production and you use it as seed. Clearly, you can use it for yourself, but you can also share it with others. Or insofar as you sell something into market, somebody can go and buy the commodity as grain and then use it as seed. What's the trade-off here? When you're getting something from a company, clearly they need to be sustainable, so they are charging you for the seed that they provide, so there's a cost implication. But if you're saving your own seed, you can end up with issues of quality. There's a certain amount of complexity to saving it, like how to deal with phytosanitary issues or how to clean seed or how to maintain its viability. There's also an issue with visibility, which is it's really more difficult for people to know what people are growing. And insofar as extension services or policymakers or other folks within the agricultural sector could use that information to make better decisions, that is more difficult in the circumstances where folks are not buying seed from a company. So we're just going to talk about some of the varieties that are essentially self-replicating technology, and this is important because some types of crops, some of the varieties that are used aren't going to be easy to use in this respect because they're not self-replicating, so they're not going to maintain their varietal identity. That can be okay, but it's just something to be aware of, and we're going to talk about the ones that are self-replicating today. So one is pureline inbreeding varieties, and here you can think of like beans, rice, wheat would be some of these that are common and people are familiar with. There's also clonally propagated varieties, and these are cassava, yam, taro, potato, and others that people would be familiar with. Let's talk a little bit about pureline inbreeding varieties. So basically, these are fully inbred varieties. So they're homozygous or have pure genetics. Um, they're hermaphrodites, which means they have both male and female reproductive organs, and they self-pollinate, which means they're having sex with themselves and they make exact copies of themselves. And so, because of this, it means that when you harvest that grain, you can distribute it and it'll be the same genetics as the variety that you planted. So, the seeds and the fruits or the harvested grain can be used as seed for planting without having segregation of the genetics. Now, of course, there are challenges. Growers may admix their variety with other varieties, knowingly or unknowingly. You can have some outcrossing that occurs, but it is rare. And probably the main one, again, to do with the visibility is often you lose the understanding of the original identity, gets sold to market, it gets sold as something under a different name, or somebody shares it with a different name than what the, original varietal name is, and it becomes unclear what's what. Clonally propagated crops and varieties of those crops are a little bit different. Um, they're vegetatively propagated, usually by cuttings of some sort. Here you see potatoes, so they're like cuttings of the tuber. But there's also like if it's cassava, or also sometimes referred to as manioc, is a stem cutting, and of course you have slips or cuttings of things like yam, where it's sort of the vine that roots. Um, these are heterozygous genetics typically, so but because you're propagating them vegetatively, they're exact copies, so they're clones. One of the nice things about this is any sort of like hybrid performance from those heterozygous genetics is conserved, but there's a number of challenges here, of course. So, one of the things is that admixture can still occur. There can be phytosanitary issues. So there's often like increasing viral load as these cuttings are propagated, because they don't go through sexual reproduction and produce a seed. If you use implements to cut them that are contaminated, you transfer those diseases. They're typically slow to increase, so their multiplication factor is lower. They can be challenging to transport and store. And as is the case for pure line varieties that are inbreeding, you can also lose an understanding of original identity. It is nice that outcrossing doesn't matter. For these particular crops. Now, doesn't mean that they don't outcross and produce seed. It's just that you're not actually planting that seed that is produced. So that outcrossing does not affect your planting material. Um, I think it's worthwhile understanding a little bit what I'll call the failure conundrum. So many people say, "Hey, we've had good varieties for a long time. Since the 1950s, we've been continually, creating improved varieties that perform better. And look, we find that in a number of different countries, there's not really a lot of utilization of these varieties. People have not adopted the newer varieties. They're still growing, land races or older varieties. And why is this? And I think there's a couple of, main questions here. One is, do people have access in the first place to those new varieties? And then, are the varieties that are the quote unquote new and improved varieties, are they actually acceptable? Are they meeting people's needs? Um, our approach to this is to not end up paralyzed through analysis of what's what or which is happening. What we want to focus on is addressing both of these issues by disseminating seed of best bet improved varieties. So this addresses the access issue because you're actually actively disseminating them. And then we also want to source feedback and listen to the folks who are growing these varieties to understand whether they're acceptable or not. So then, if people have had access and they grow them and they don't like them, make sure to capture that and the reasons why, so that it's understandable that they're not going to actually use that variety going forward after their experience. And that means you need to find different improved varieties to assist people with that meet their needs and preferences. So just a little bit of an overview of the approach to enabling scaled access is, first you need to identify the improved varieties with profiles that meet growers' needs. This adaptability, certain preferences. You need to procure seed of these varieties. So you need to find somebody who either has seed or is going to produce seed and do so with sufficient quality that it really is the variety that you want to be disseminating. And then you disseminate these in small test amounts of seed to growers through existing social networks. So there's an incredible amount of talent out there in the world when it comes to growing food. People have been doing this for a long time. They're very successful at it. They secure their families' livelihoods through doing it, and they already know how to grow a crop. Of course, we could provide, training or more understanding about agronomy or access to inputs, all of which are useful. But generally, if somebody has been growing rice or beans or wheat or another crop in, sort of their household portfolio of activities, they're going to know what to do with seed when they receive seed. And they're going to be able to grow that seed alongside their existing variety with their, or existing varieties that they're growing with their current management and make a decision about whether they feel like it's improved in terms of their preferences and needs and start using it. And if they do, they of course can then disseminate that to family, neighbors, friends, and other communities. Within this process, we of course want to source feedback to understand what's going on. And then we also want to create an opportunity for a seed company connection. So sometimes the complexity of growing and saving your own seed, that's not going to be your preference as a farmer, a grower, as a household. And so it's nice to have an opportunity if you want more seed or seed where you feel like the quality is superior to the, seed that you would use if you were to just save grain, that you have an opportunity to buy that from a company, and then you can assess whether their pricing is acceptable or not to you. Um, so what do? We track progress, we learn, and we improve. So one, you need to see what's working in terms of dissemination. Through what organizations did this reach growers in an effective way where they tested it out and came to their own conclusions about it. You need to evaluate how growers are further disseminating and scaling access to seed of improved varieties. And so, they test it, they find it acceptable, but then does it just stay with them or does it move beyond their household and farm? And what we're really looking for is cases where it does and does so significantly. And so based on this, you need to sort of fine tune the variety selection and the dissemination process to better amplify access and ramp scaling. This is going to look a little bit different or even substantially different in different settings. So, sometimes people talk about rice in India and they'll say, look, in India, the millers for rice determine predominantly what varieties people grow because their mills are set up to mill a specific grain type. And mills are often providing people with credit or inputs along with a requirement for what variety that people grow. So in that sort of case, you really need to work with millers if that's the dynamic that you have to make sure they're accepting of a variety and that they're going to promote it and accept it if you want it to scale. So you can really think of this approach as a reverse epidemiological process where you're working to maximize the number of contacts and the spread of improved varieties while reducing the cost of seeding the system. So, we've all lived COVID, right? And there you want to, make sure that you're minimizing contacts and reducing spread. But when it comes to access to a good technology like seed, you want to do the exact opposite. So a few current examples that we have right now in seed programs international. We're very fortunate to be working with a well-fed world. and their planetary pulse project. So that's fostering the growth and consumption of pulses, and we are then using those funds to try out these processes to scale access to seed of pulse crops. Um, we have a partnership with Makushi Seeds in Zimbabwe to distribute bean seed to underserved communities, and this in part was funded by the Planetary Pulse Project. So working with an existing seed company, they do small tester packs. Those go out through contacts that we have in various different communities, schools, faith-based groups, senior centers, other sorts of support, communities within, the particular country or region, and then we source feedback from that. And then if people want more seed, they can always choose to buy it if they aren't scaling it of their own accord. We've also identified a company in Rwanda that is promoting and provisioning improved bean varieties, and so we're working to put in place a project for dissemination with tester packs in Rwanda through existing networks. So we're always thinking about what is the sustainability here. Sustainability is at its highest when you have a commercial partner that is also doing this as a business activity, and then how can this be a win-win for underserved communities and also the company that is trying to grow and sustain its business. And so we see this as sort of a yes and approach, generally to providing people to access to seed, which it all starts with the seed. If you don't have any seed, there's no agronomy to be done. And so that sort of wraps things up for this brief overview, and then would love to just open it up to questions and discussion. Yeah, any thoughts from anyone? Maybe we'll just ask Priscilla. You'd mentioned in Cameroon wanting to work with more crops that are sort of native to Cameroon, and maybe you could give an example and then some thoughts on where people are getting their seed from.
Wh- What I know of the communities, like this, maybe like around 2014, there was the introduction of GMO seeds, and they came, and the community bought into it, and people started buying it, but then you could not you reuse the seeds. So for the royal community, that was very, very tasking because they always had to go back and buy seeds. So it took, as people, because they promised the community that they will get more productivity, they will get more yield when they use the GMO seeds. So people bought into those seeds and they forgo the indigenous seeds that they were using. But then the seed was not sustainable. So the community now is trying to get back to, um, I mean, there are other things. There's climate change. There is problem with the degradation of land because of the use of fertilizers and all kinds of things. So the situation is very, very terrible. Like the um the royal farmer is bogged down by all these challenges, but they're trying to figure out a way to get out of it. So I am going in there to see, not really clear as how do we get the community to start using quality seeds. So that's how I contacted them. Somebody told me about SPI, and I contacted SPI because I need the clear understanding of when you are in a situation like that, how do you get the community back to start using quality seeds? Because I don't know whether anybody knows what the quality seeds are.
Yeah, no, good question. I think maybe you start with understanding what people are growing currently and where they're sourcing their seed and what varieties they like, and what sorts of characteristics or attributes of those varieties are important to the growers in the community. And then based on that, you can sort of identify both varieties and sources of seeds for those varieties that could be appropriate. So you know, if people are growing beans, I think I heard you mention beans, then,
Yeah.
they would be like, oh, are those, red mottled beans like they are in Zimbabwe? That's a preferred type. Are they black? Are they, yellow like in Tanzania? Yellow colored beans are very popular in some places. And then based on that, you start looking for your best bet varieties that you could introduce. And then you need a seed source. So in a place like Cameroon, and especially if you're in a region where there's conflict, you have to figure out what the source of seed is going to be and how you're going to supply it to the community. So that'd be something we'd be very happy to talk with you about. Ed, you mentioned working with, I think, Native American communities in your region. I think you mentioned a number like 60,000 inhabitants. And so interested to hear a little bit about your experience with sourcing seed for projects with, such a large and probably diverse community in terms of needs and interests and perspectives.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for calling on me here. We at the tribe itself, we are continuing to build our seed storage facility as we go. Just about three years ago, 4 years ago, we had some corn to circle back into our community. It was purple seed corn as well as some white gourd seed that was here over 100 years ago that I openly give to others that understand the value of this corn. We continue with the Three Sisters method and teaching the Three Sisters method across the community and getting young people involved in what ag really is. And of course, like I said earlier, we're knee deep in commodity crops all around us, so we have to be very, very careful where we plant heirloom varieties versus GMO varieties. It's really challenging to understand what pollination is and how far pollination goes in our communities. So we work really closely with all groups that are looking at creating these seed saving banks, and it's important that we do this. But more importantly, sharing the seed to those who understand the seed.
Nice.
Mhm.
Ed, just to mention here, you might want to connect with Dennis. Dennis was mentioning, his sort of career in the seed industry, and did seed certification and all sorts of different activities, many of which require on a crop by crop basis understanding like isolation distance. And it seems like that's maybe one of the challenges that you're looking at in terms of wanting to be able to plant something and then be able to brown bag seed from those plantings without having it being outcrossing to a bunch of other varieties that don't have the characteristics of the varieties that you want to preserve. So something that we at seed programs could definitely help you with, but also someone on the call here right now who would be able to support you in answering some of those questions, which is part of what we do in seed programs. We seek to bring people together so that they can share their talents. Um, Anyone else on the call? We've heard from Priscilla, we've heard from Ed. Anybody else with sort of questions or examples they'd like to share?
Uh-huh.
I
This
have
this is
one
David.
concern that I want to address. I want to ask the local community that I'm trying to serve, the Northwest Cameroon, their staple food is corn flour.
Okay.
But then I just realized, because I've been working with these communities now for like 3 years, I just realized that the corn variety species that they're using, they only produce it one harvest once a year, and it takes 7 months from planting to harvest. I don't think anybody can get out of poverty harvesting just once a year. And I'm trying to see how do we go about testing different species to find out which will work in the local environment for them.
It's a great question. And yes, there has been success in many geographies where growers move from growing one crop in a seasonal cycle to two crops in a seasonal cycle by growing earlier maturing varieties. That can be a popular technique. It sort of also depends on your rainfall patterns and whether you have like a major and minor season of rainfall. And in that case, sometimes you can grow one crop in the major season and a different crop in the minor season. And then in terms of testing, r- really that sort of approach is you would need to obtain seed of earlier maturing, maize varieties, and then you would need to plant those in the community, and you'd need somebody who's designated to sort of manage that so that there's a good execution of the testing to see how it goes. And you'd want to measure some things like, can I actually get two crops? If I do get two crops, does it actually produce more than just growing one crop? And so setting that all up involves quite a bit of work. We can maybe hear from Michael here in a bit because I know Michael and his team does some of this type of work for testing varieties to see which ones are going to work best. But Dennis, you were speaking up as well, and so I know you also know about this topic.
Yeah.
So before Michael goes, maybe you could say a few words.
Okay. I had a question. Will this presentation be something that you can share, that we can share with others? This
Yes, yeah,
PowerPoint,
we're recording
possibly?
it. So
Okay,
then,
all right. Because I would like to be able to share that with the Tanzanian group I'm working with if they would like. I would make a quick comment for the lady working in Cameroon. I worked a number of years throughout Adamawa State in Nigeria, nestled up to Cameroon. And the primary group was EYN Church, but they served Muslims and all denominations. But the church worked in setting up a minimal agri extension program. They used IITA soybean varieties, and then they used some open pollinated maize varieties. And with those, the church actually made the purchase, and then they scaled up and produced some very modest amounts of seed for modest priced sales to members throughout the community. And so that was we started working with that in 2016, and I'm no longer physically active, but I keep in touch with them a lot. And so that was a group that was helping to do the scaling, and then it would be maintaining and propagating both open polled maize that was suitable, and then also on the soybean with that. So there might be some things up and down the border um, that you might make some contacts across in your neighboring state if you have those. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Dennis. It's a
Mhm.
really
Thank you.
good indication there that, working with an organization that's going to dedicate a resource helps with doing sort of testing and also seed
Yeah.
production and seed
Yeah,
dissemination.
I mean, they didn't have a lot of resources, but they multiplied a number of acres of soybean and open pollinated corn, maize each year. It fell far short of meeting the great needs, but it was meeting needs. And the main thing was it was the community, all denominations trusted the church to be honest and have integrity of what they were offering of that.
Mm,
And that they worked very
Right.
closely in the Muslim community as well. They did the Christian community, and I worked with them for a long time. So that it's just hard to scale up. Yeah.
yeah. Trust is important.
Do
Priscilla,
you
you
have a
were saying,
contact information? Yeah, do you have a contact information for IT?
Uh, it's well,
I
they're
think
in
there's Priscilla with IITA, you
yeah,
can look online,
yeah,
but
that
you're probably looking for like a
it's
specific person that maybe Dennis would recommend.
I
Okay,
can
that would be
I
wonderful.
can contact you with my contact at IITA has changed positions, but we could make a contact with the EYN church people, and they could help reference that perhaps. So yeah, if you can
Wonderful.
provide your contact back through Brian at the end of the program or something, I'll be happy to try to make a contact there.
Oh, okay, I will appreciate that
Okay,
very
all right.
much.
And Priscilla, we will have your contact that you signed up with Zoom, but if you wanted to put your email in chat, and maybe Dennis, if you wanted to do the same, or anyone else
Okay.
that sort of wants to get a connection through this meeting, people can then potentially harvest the emails they want to from chat for the people that have put them in there. Michael, you've done a significant amount of testing with different varieties. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what that entails in Liberia. One of the things that always impresses me is like this is a lot about being diligent and putting in the effort. It involves labor and it involves land and it involves some inputs, but those inputs can be fairly minimal. And so it's really about land and labor. And in a lot of countries, land and labor are very affordable, which means a lot of work can be done in this area if someone has a bit of gumption and dedication to it. Michael?
Yes, exactly. It's possible in Liberia for land and labor. It's not much of a problem for Liberian farmers. Unlike that, the purchasing powers when it comes to getting the high imports, yeah, high quality imports for their production. So you can get a land, you can get a labor, but you don't have access to the import is nothing. But then when we're talking about replicating the kind of varieties or the seeds that they produce, I think it's one way better for reducing the production cost when it comes to our Liberian farmers. Unlike other countries, but our Liberian farmers don't have the technical know-how when it comes to processing or preserving seeds for their production for the next farming season. So you always see that they will want to finish harvesting what they want to harvest and sell. Then the remaining ones that have been damaged by pests are the ones that they're going to process for seeds to preserve seeds from, which is a very bad practice. That means you're going to be spreading diseases and pests from one location to another, from one land to another. So this is the biggest barrier when it comes to replicating seeds for Liberian farmers. So you talk to them, okay, if you want to preserve seeds from the farming for the next farming season, it's better you do it from the early stage, maybe the first production, the first fruits. You can process out the disease-free ones, but they will see the ones that have been hampered by pests and diseases and then process it from there. So the seeds you're gonna be replicating for the next production will always be disease affected. So the production will be low. Uh, that means you're gonna be using half high amount of input when it comes to insecticide. So you will got a lot of work to do. So these are things that we face within our sector when it comes to the agriculture and also preserving seeds for next farming. Then the water mineral seeds we brought, most of the farmers consider to be one of the best variety, high producing variety. So they intended to get seeds from what they will produce when they trial products and then preserve it for the next farming season because they think that they will not have those variety available to their needs for the next planting season. But yet they will keep encouraging them that the variety will be on ground within a shorter period of time. So that's just my take on that.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. We had a few people join during the presentation. I think Jean-Louis, you are, I think, the only one who is still on the line. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and if you have any comments. You're muted as well. I could go ask to unmute. If you can't unmute, that's okay. Oh, there we go.
Hello everybody. My name is Elson. I'm from Haiti. So my English is not very well to introduce and the conversation.
Great. Well, thanks for joining, Wilson. Haiti, we've got a number of different places represented here on the line. We have the US, we have Haiti, we have Liberia, we have Kenya, we have Cameroon. And this sort of approach that we're outlining here can work anywhere. And it's really a yes and approach. We've seen a lot of folks who are really just focused on commercial for-profit seed enterprises, and there is nothing wrong with that. But clearly, the reach of those organizations and the cost of the seed that they produce can result in some folks not gaining access to improve seed. And so we're looking at options beyond that. And then also just to say, even though the seed sector and the seed industry is very strong in countries like the US or Canada or Europe, there's still a significant number of crops that operate in terms of development of new varieties and dissemination of seed in largely a non-commercial and government subsidized manner, and then rely on growers to sort of further disseminate or maintain varieties. I think here we're ending sort of the end of the time scheduled for this call. So let us sort of wrap up here. And if there were any last questions, we could address any questions from the group. Otherwise, it's always nice to get on with the rest of our day, whether it be morning or evening, given that we represent so many different places around the world here. Any last questions? Great. Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending. And
I have a question.
Oh yes, please, Michael.
All right. My question is this advisable that farmers use one variety that they have processed seeds from for over like 3, 4, 5 farming seasons?
Yeah, I mean, farmers can save seeds for many growing seasons. And then, there's just this consideration of like how pure they're going to be able to maintain it. And then also like potentially if it's vegetatively propagated, phytosanitary considerations. But it is not uncommon for growers to maintain seed over many planting seasons. Just there's the complexity to it of maintaining the quality of that seed, and that's one of the reasons why it can be of interest to growers to buy seed from a seed company, um, either every season, or if not every season, after a certain amount of time, to buy seed that they have sort of a known quality of, given the seed company that's providing it. I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, there's really no limitation to the number of seasons that you can save and replant seed for crops that meet that sort of specification. But clearly it can be difficult to maintain quality when it's just one of many activities that you're doing.
Okay, I asked a question based on once upon a time, 2016, when I was doing so was in Global, because Inglo was an agribusiness institution. We saw seeds and we training as well. So interesting when I met a farmer who had just a single tomato plant on her farm. The plant grew very healthy, very big, you know, there's so many fruits, more than just that one plant had more than 300 fruits on it. But all of the fruits was very tiny, very tiny. So I asking like, which variety of tomato is it? He said, Master, you will now understand this tomato variety has had it for over 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years. So I think that was one of the factors. He used those varieties over and over and again. So the production dropped, and then the size of the fruits were also affected because he used the one variety over and over.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, growers can maintain a variety for many years. Not that my grandma is like a grower of any note, but you know, she saved the peas that she grew in her garden for over 50 years. So, you know, she's 101 now, but she, you know, gardened for a long, long time, and you know, she got peas from somewhere at one point, and then she just saved them every year. Everyone, thank you so much for your time. We will have additional webinars throughout the year, and hopeful that if your schedule permits, you'll join, and you'll bring your knowledge and understanding and experiences to those webinars to share with others. So thank you so much, and everyone, have a great day out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.